I've been looking at a lot of the information that's put out there about Gen AI and associated AI technologies, right? ML, data science, and typically I find it in kind of three main areas. The first is like the deep technical stuff. How to use RAG, how to build a neural network from scratch, how to get the latest loss function that some researchers come up with into TensorFlow or PyTorch, how to scale across clusters. It's very technical, very deep, lots of value, fantastic for data scientists. There's then obviously the hype. Gen AI's rubbish, it'll never have a use case, it'll eat the world's data, it'll just plagiarism, copyright theft, all of that stuff, right, that goes on. And then conversely, in that same area, right, the other side of the coin, very much more the opposite, right? We're going to have superhuman intelligence by Christmas or wherever it might be, the latest 2 to 3 year, maybe 5 year time scale, and that's kind of noise, right? Who knows, right? Gen AI, large language models, may be the answer to everything. I have my doubts, but still, right? There's a lot of noise there. The other side of it is I'm starting to see, certainly in what what I'm aware of on LinkedIn and what gets, the algorithm, should we say, promotes to me, is very much the here's how you do Gen AI, right? And it is invariably same as AI, right? Get your data, have a use case, etc., etc., etc. Right? It's and I'm guilty of this as well. I've put a lot of posts out there. Have been very much around that. You could almost say teaching grandmother to suck eggs, if you're familiar with that saying, right? I'm pretty sure most CTOs know this, CIOs know this, head of data should definitely know this, right? If you've got a business case, is your data clean? Is your data fit for purpose? Is it accessible? You infringing on any ethical regulations or whatever it might be, right? Pretty sure everyone's got that message right now. So where do you go, right? You can position yourself around one of these core messages. You can mix them, and all that is all viable, right? There's no right or wrong answer. For me, though, I think it's telling somebody needs a business case, telling somebody that they need to get their data clean and in order and all of that, right? They either know it or maybe they don't. If they haven't done it and they know it, is it a bit like saying to somebody that's unfit, you need to go to the gym? They kind of know it, they just haven't worked out how to make that work in their life. It's like, the other one I used to laugh at, should we say, for more personal reasons, is, well, if you don't want to stop smoking, just stop. If you want to stop vaping, just vape. It's, thanks, stating the bleeding obvious, right? But often in life, the bleeding obvious, if you want to call it that, is not necessarily the easiest thing to do. There's, I think, and this is, a call for not just, the other, AI gurus out there, if they want to, label themselves that way, but the people who are constantly promoting and, talking about their craft, and, brilliant, right? Let's keep sharing our crafts to the world, right? But it's start to think about what's the real value, right? If you're regurgitating, a message that has, I started talking about AI at conferences in 2018, and the message hasn't hugely changed in a lot of ways. Organizations are struggling with data, they're struggling with business case, etc. Right? So, that's like 6-7 years. Sure, it's been going on for longer. You could probably swap AI for something else, right? ERP, CRM, get a business case, etc., etc., etc. Right? Line up your organization behind it. It's an age-old story, right? We're just positioning it in the AI world. What's the value right now to bring to to an audience, and for me, the next thing is not necessarily about the technology, right? The technology has its issues and the business case has issues, and it's not always clear cut and nuanced and all that, right? How do you bring the human aspect into this whole world, right? And that's something that I'm much more passionate about, and I don't necessarily I don't just mean this is about how many people get made redundant. Like, it's not about that. Well, okay, there's a huge impact, right? So it's it's more about bringing humanity into a world that's highly technology driven. Um, I've got a post out on LinkedIn right now, a poll. I'll put a comment, I'll put a link in the comments below, where I'm asking CTOs where they see the value or the challenges in realizing value. And there's been some interesting conversations with some people I know quite well around, um, the human aspect is, redundancies, right? I can automate a process, I don't need so many people. And that's absolutely one way of realizing value, right? And many organizations, I'm sure, will go down that route. They can take a significant cost base out by at the expense of people and replace them with AI. I just think you need to be very careful doing that. And it's not just about the people that you let go. It's about the quality of service that you then provide to your end customers. So, swapping out, a number of contact center people because you can automate them with a large language model and a chatbot. What's the impact to your end customer? Because you could end up in a vicious cycle, right? You take costs out of the organization, but you've not considered the impact on the people that you're serving, right? So if they realize that they're getting a really bad service, for want of a better way of describing it, and they decide to go somewhere else, what are you going to do? Because your revenues come down now, your customers are leaving, right? So at that point, you're having to take more costs out of the organization? Quite possibly, right? It's a vicious circle. So the other way to look at it, which is the way I prefer to look at it and try my best, is where's the value that AI can bring in terms of an end customer, right? So can you respond to them quicker and more efficiently is a way to look at it, right? Because they get a better service. Better service invariably leads to more customers, unless you're in a very niche and very tightly packed customer base, which is, let's we say, in rare circumstances, unless maybe you've got a constraint, you can only work with people in this small town, right, in northern England or wherever it might be, right? But if you start to look at it, what value can I add to end customers? You might find out that actually, taking the easier work away from people, the stuff that's repetitive and boring and they do day in, day in, day out, opens up the opportunity to deal with much more, I guess, I'll say harder, more interesting work, right? You can reposition them. So a lot of the work I've done, a lot of the AI initiatives I've delivered have been around this. How can you automate the easy stuff to give people a much more interesting piece of work, right? An interesting role. They can grow, they can learn new things. So it really, for me, the other way of looking at this is you can scale and do more, right? So if you've got 1,000 customers and 10 people are really struggling to, made up figures, of course, right? 10 people are really struggling to, I get a lot of messages, really struggling to keep the work, to keep supporting those and serving those customers, right? What happens if you could automate 50% of the work, right? Them 10 people could now serve 2,000 people. So go and get 2,000 customers, an extra 1,000, right? How do you scale? How can this technology be used to scale? The other thing is, providing a service where it's not, I say, economically viable to scale a team. So I was speaking to a company, and I won't. I know they talked about this publicly, but I won't directly mention them. They have 6,000 assets on their book, and they have a feature list for each asset. And 6,000 assets at once. And they vary. They're in a used goods market, right? So they have features around each of these assets. They can describe them with a set of various things. And previously they had a template. This X has these features and there's these price and etc, 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 right? It's there are 4 or 5 templates. Pick random one from the 5, populate it, post it. It's okay, right? So what they're using Gen AI for is to generate meaningful, interesting, compelling copy based around that list of features. So no longer is it just meh, 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 right? It's like, imagine yourself, right, doing this. Yeah, it's much more compelling and interesting. Now, commercially, yeah, they work in a business that's operates on very low margins. They don't have the luxury, if you want to call it that, to go and get 100 more people in to write compelling copy, and then next week write more compelling copy when the stock changes, and keep doing that, right? You know, I'm pretty sure these people might get bored of that job anyway. But anyway, that's, you know, maybe a judgment call, right? And Gen AI now means that they can put more compelling copy on a website for people to buy into a vision around what they're perusing. And of course, what does that mean? Well, you know, my conversation with the CTO was, at what point can you demonstrate that I'm now selling these things for more, or I'm selling them quicker? And he's like, that's where they're trying to get through. It's quite early days for them, so they didn't have they had a qualitative metric, not a quantitative metric, and they were trying to get to that, because at that point, you know, they can go in and sell the vision of what Gen AI can do to, you know, other parts of the business that they were in, right, and even potentially, right, to their competitors. So this is for me is how to look at, I'll say Gen AI, but really it's AI and machine learning and data in its entirety, right? I think, you know, Gen AI has its use cases, but it's not the be all and end all. You know, like I've worked for projects in the past where, you know, just automating 20% of the work is huge, because it gets through a backlog, right? You don't need to move people around for business peaks, you know, take, you know, people from that department to this department for 2 months of the year or whatever it might be, right? Or, you know, you know, and that department, of course, suffers during those 2 months, right? They spend the next 10 months catching back up and working, you know, long hours and under a lot of pressure, right? So it has benefits across the piece, right? So kind of urge you, when you're looking at, you know, AI initiatives, data initiatives, any automation, or even probably any digital or technology transformation, what is it that you can do that improves the human experience in the whole process, right? Not just internal staff, but external people too, right? Your customers. And, you know, you could even say, by doing that, and I know there's a big thing about shareholder value, which is probably a subject of a different video. In my opinion, how do you maximize shareholder value, right? You do it by keeping your customers happy, because customers bring more customers when they're happy. You know, we've all done it, right? I had this best service at this restaurant, you must try it out, yeah? Best car dealership ever. When you want your next car, go and talk to John, or, you know, whatever it might be, or Mary, or whoever, right? You know, it's like, there is so much that we do based on a good recommendation without even realizing it. So if we treated our AI initiatives, our data initiatives, machine learning, whatever it might be, in the same way, the mind boggles, right? Like, where would we be? What would this world look like? What would our technology teams, how would they show up and feel, right? How would our business teams show up? How would they feel? How would our customers feel about their engagement with us?